ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. O Ram Krishna, the establisher of all religions, the embodiment of all religions, and the greatest of all the incarnations, we salute thee. In the last discourse, we discussed several points. Number one, we don't have the record of the actions of early incarnations, like as we have in the case of Sri Ramakrishna. Second, this is because that we are not having the early records of the early incarnations. This is because the devotees of those incarnations, like Krishna, Buddha, Christ, etc., did not record. Why? They thought such description of their early life would bring out the imperfections natural to that stage and age of the incarnation. That would harm the faith of devotees, which was not true. Then also we learned immature bhaktas only think that way, that if we know about the earlier period and the immaturity of the incarnations, it would harm our devotion. Only immature devotees will think like that. Mature devotees do not think like that. Sri Ramakrishna gave different instructions to different people according to their any abilities, according to their inclinations of their mind. And we also learned that self-effort to some he used to teach, and self-surrender he would teach to some. And whether man has free will, about this Sri Ramakrishna said, man has been given a limited free will. After he uses it in the right and righteous way, he is given more free will. So he goes on expanding the free will. In the end, he will be as free as God himself when he becomes completely perfect. Example he gave was a cow tied to a tether with a length of the rope. If the cow just moves about in a natural way, it can graze in the whole small field. But if it goes on showing it too much intelligence, going around and around the tether, the length of the rope becomes smaller and smaller, and the cow gets tied near about the tether itself. It cannot move. So this was the example he gave. Come now, we continue the topic of self-surrender, which Sri Ramakrishna was teaching. Vishnu, who eternally sports in Goloka, Goloka is Vaikuntha, for some reason cursed Narada that he must go to hell. Narada's anxiety knew no bounds. He sang hymns in his praise and pleased him. Then he said, O Lord, I wish to know what and where hell is, and how many kinds of hells there are. Please be gracious to tell me all about it. Vishnu then drew on the ground with a piece of chalk heaven, earth, and hell as they were situated, and said, This is heaven and this is hell. Narada said, Is that so? My suffering in hell is then done here. Saying so, he rolled on the hell, drawn on the ground, got up and bowed down to the Lord. Vishnu smiled and said, What's that? Can that be the suffering hell? Narada replied, Why not, Lord? Are not heaven and hell your creations? When you drew the hell and called it such, the spot really became hell. And when I rolled on it, it was a real suffering of hell for me. Narada said, so with deep faith and on that hell drawn on the ground with true devotion and faith. It was by making that little effort that his suffering was annulled. The Master explained to us from time to time, with the help of this story, that there was thus room for perseverance, personal effort and individual effort in the realm of grace too. Grace is there, but we must also put effort for that to get that grace. The incarnations of God have to experience to a great extent the spiritual blindness and circumscribed knowledge experienced by us who are in ignorance when they assume human bodies and play their parts as human beings. They have to make efforts like us to discover the way out of spiritual darkness and ignorance. And although an awareness of the real nature now and then arises in their minds for a short time, it becomes veiled again till that path is discovered. Thus, for the good of the many, they have come to assume a veil of Maya and grope their way like us in the realm of light and darkness. But as they have not even an iota of hankering for selfish enjoyment in their minds, they see more light in life than we do, and easily concentrating all the numerous powers within them, solve life's problems in a short time and engage themselves in doing good to humanity. Inasmuch as our Master, the God man, has actually accepted human imperfections, much good will accrue to us from the study of the human feelings of his. And that is why we advise our readers to study his divine nature, keeping before their eyes his human feelings. If we do not take him as one of us, we shall not be able to discover any purpose behind his superhuman effort, perseverance, etc., at the time of the spiritual practices, the sadhana. Otherwise, the question will naturally arise why there had to be such effort to realize the truth when he was externally perfect. And we cannot escape the idea that his terrible effort, threatening his very life, was but a sham. It is hypocrisy, it would appear to us, if we do not accept that he was also struggling just like human beings, but with a tremendous power behind him. That is not all. His effort, steadfastness, and renunciation for the purpose of firmly implanting the high ideals in his life with a view to realizing God will give rise to despair rather than hope in our hearts, making the dispelling of ignorance from our lives an impossibility. Suppose we think he is a divine person, so though he struggled only to show like in a drama, so then we would not follow. We don't follow a drama actor or a cinema actor in our life. We know it is a false life. It is a sort of a artificial life that cannot be followed. We would also be like that if we think that God has all his divinity revealed to him, and as a God, he is just feigning all the spiritual practices he is doing. The danger is there. So that's why he corrects the truth that God also was as human as we were, but he had a tremendous willpower to reach the goal, and he struggled hard, found the new way of reaching that God, easier ways for the humanity according to the age when he is born. Depending as we are on Master's grace, we must accept him as being endowed with human feelings like ourselves. For it is not his sympathy with our sorrows that lead him to come forward to remove them. Therefore, from whatever angle we see, we have to no other course than to think of him as having human feelings. In fact, until we ourselves are free from the kinds of bondage we are established in the nature of attributeless Brahman, we shall have to think of and accept God, the universal cause, and his incarnations as being endowed with human feelings. The saying, becoming God, one should worship him. Devo bhutva devam yajet. So you must become as much divine as possible to worship any divine being, any god or goddess, is indeed true. If you have reached the nirvikalpa plane of consciousness by virtue of samadhi, then alone will you be able to realize the real nature of God, have a correct conception of Him, and truly worship Him. So, the conceptions of God that we have is very, very relative. Only a person who has experienced the highest spiritual light in Nirvikalpa Samadhi can tell what really is God. So, the God's nature, to know it, we ourselves have to rise to a higher level. But if you have not been able to do so, your worship will be but an attempt at ascending into the divine plane and making yourself fit for the true worship of God. True worship of God is possible only when we ourselves become godly. Till then, you will continue to consider God, the cause of the universe, to be a human being endowed with extraordinary powers. Persons who can ascend to the state of Godhead and can truly worship Him as the divine being are very few. Weak aspirants like ourselves have been till now very far from that state. Thus, having compassion on the ordinary mortals like ourselves and desiring to accept our heartfelt worship, God descends to the plane of human beings, putting on the appearance of a God man by assuming a human body and human feelings. We are in an advantageous position to study the history of Sri Ramakrishna's spiritual striving in comparison with that of the godmen of the past. For the Master himself delineated in detail from time to time the facts of the sadhana period of his life, imprinted on our minds in such glowing terms and colors that they have remained firmly imprinted on our minds. Again, the wonderful play of his life as an aspirant has been acted before all the people of the Kali temple. There must be scores of people there. Before them, all these spiritual sadhanas have been done just before we went to him. Before the direct disciples went to him, he had done these sadhanas. And there were evidences to know what sadhanas he did. Whatever he said was the direct evidence. Others also would confirm what he has done it. So historically it is so strongly established. That's what the point we have to observe. And many of those people were still there, those Kali temple people. So we had also the opportunity of hearing from them some of those events. That apart, before we began to study the history of these events, it is good to rehearse once in a general way the fundamental principles of sadhana. So we shall add a brief discussion on it. So we will go for a brief discussion on what is sadhana and what is the sadhaka, what is a spiritual discipline and who is a spiritual aspirant. To become truly acquainted with the sadhaka state of the Master's life, we must first of all know what sadhana is. An objection may be raised here, which we call it as in Sanskrit Purva Paksha. They themselves assume, the author himself assumes a question may be raised. So an objection may be raised. Why do you increase the bulk of the book by raising this topic when India has all along been engaged in it in some form or other. About sadhana we have been doing. Our elders have been doing, we are also doing. So why do you want to discuss it with us? Which other nation in the world has applied and is still applying its powers to realize directly the truths of spiritual realm as this country has done since the very dawn of time? In which other country have so many incarnations of God and no heirs of Brahman have been born? Therefore, it is superfluous to recount the fundamental principles of spiritual discipline to us who are already acquainted with them. This is in the Swami is taking the line of our earlier scholars of our country, like Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, all the religious teachers, as well as other scholars also. Whenever they used to discuss any subject, first of all, they must tell the necessity of it. If there is no necessity, what is the good of wasting time of ours as well as the listeners? So this question is raised. Why are you talking about sadhana? Sadhana we have been seeing and doing. So you need not waste our time. Why do you want to raise this topic? After raising it, he is answering it. Although what has been said is true, your objection that there is no necessity to discuss sadhana may be true, a real need will be served by recounting for people have fantastic ideas about sadhana in many places. May not be in very well informed sadhaka circle, but in an ordinary circle of society. So a lot of confusion, misconceptions are there regarding what a spiritual sadhana is. Having lost sight of the goal, they think they come across sadhana when they meet with the practice of extraordinary physical hardship, the bringing together of rare objects, strange actions in out of the way places, holding the breath, nay, even the fantastic doings of deranged minds. So this is all these things we think as spiritual sadhana because it is all unnatural, out of natural way. So we think they are all the sadhanas. Again, they regard as sadhana those peculiar practices which were originally prescribed by some great souls for bringing to normality certain minds obsessed with evil impressions and habits, quite as much as those which are now being preached. So, some extraordinary spiritual practices were prescribed for certain extraordinary persons, exceptional persons. But people accepted they are the common sadhana. These are all very grotesque, very strange practices that was meant for only for individuals. So that problem also is there, mistaking some exceptional practices as the general sadhana, holding good for all minds and practice as such. So we go to practice those exceptional sadhanas. There are still others who, lacking in dispassion, vairagya, wistfully craving for the enjoyment of fleeting objects of senses, such as beautiful forms and delicious dishes, spend their lives in vain efforts under a delusion that the Lord, the cause of the universe, would be constrained by means of certain mantras and practices as snakes are. So there are certain spiritual practices practiced by some people. They are not following the right path. They are doing some bizarre actions, taking things that should not be taken, following practices that are bad for hygiene as well as morality. But we consider because it is not a uncommon one, we think that also as a spiritual practice. Therefore, it will not be out of place here to make a brief survey of the truths about sadhana, discovered by the effort and perseverance of the sages and seers of India through millennia. So there is a necessity we should know what real sadhana is, the real essence of the sadhana, the goal of every sadhana, what it is, the author is going to explain. The master used to say, seeing Brahman or God in all beings is the last word of sadhana. Any spiritual sadhana. What is the end of it? End of it is not only seeing God within ourselves, we seeing God everywhere. Seeing God when we are in meditation, deep meditation in our samadhi, seeing God when we open our eyes and see the creation before our eyes, we will see the same Brahman, same Godhead within ourselves, in the samadhi, and outside, when you look out into the outside world, that also is Brahman alone. This is the highest goal of sadhana. This highest realization must come. Then only the sadhanas are successful completely. It fails to the lot of man as the ultimate development of spiritual discipline. Thus, say the Vedas and the Upanishads, the most authoritative scriptures to the Hindus. Whatever you see in the world, gross or subtle, sentient or insentient, bricks and beams, mud and stone, plants and trees, men and animals, gods and demigods, or they say the non-dual Brahman. It is the reality of Brahman alone that you see, that you hear, that you touch, that you smell and taste in various forms. Although all your day to day dealings throughout your life are with it, with the Brahman, you are not conscious of it. And you think you are dealing with different things and persons from Brahman. What we see in the world, we think it is not God. It is different from God. God is separate, this world is separate. That's how we think. We see the world as different from God. This will probably be easily understood by the reader if we describe here, by way of questions and answers, the gist of the doubts that arise in our minds on hearing the above statement and of the reputation thereof by the scriptures. So now the author takes another easier way to solve our problem. So a question is put and he answers the question. One part of our question is answered. So question answers method is adopted even modern education also. So the students ask the question, the teacher answers the question. And then the next student asks some further question regarding the same subject. He answers that. So the whole class as a whole, in the end of the class, it will have known the full answers for a particular question. So that is a very easy method. So this author takes that easy method to make us understand about the sadhanas. Question: why is it this fact not directly felt by us? That you see that we are not following the right path and the goal of our sadhanas is Brahman. Why is it not we are not feeling this fact? Answer. And also, how is it that we are not feeling the fact that we are the Atman? So we are the Atman. We are part and parcel of the Brahman, or we are Brahman, in whatever way you put it. We are divine selves. It is a fact. And it is I who am divine. But I don't know that I am divine. How is it? So this is the first question. So answer. You are in a delusion. When you are in a delusion, say you are seeing a dream. Dream is a sort of a delusion. It is different from reality. So in delusion, you will never see anything that is real. If you consider this world is real, when you go into dream, you will be completely oblivious of this world. So that is delusion. Go far away from truth. So then you are in a delusion. So you are in a delusion. How can you detect it, that is this Atman that is inside us, till it is removed? This delusion must go. That means the dream must go to know what this world, real world is. We also come back from the dream. After rising only, we see the real world, but never in the dream. When you are in the dream, it is in a delusion. In delusion, real world disappears, vanishes. So you have to somehow come out of the dream then you know what real world is. So here also about the Atman, we are in a delusion. We do not know that we are the Atman. We have to come out of the delusion, like coming out of the dream, then know who you are. So here also, this delusion that there is so many here, but Brahman is only one. So what we are in a delusion, we believe that so many are true, and that one Brahman is not true because of the delusion. So he says, the question was, why do we not know this fact that I am the Atman? If it is myself, can I not my own divine nature? He says, but you are in a delusion. That's why you cannot see your real nature. You are in a delusion. How can you detect it till the delusion is removed? It is by comparison with real things and states only that we detect external and internal delusions. There are two types of delusion, internal delusion, external delusion. Similarly, you must have that kind of knowledge if you want to detect that delusion. So, real knowledge is that which is known after the delusion is gone. The next question, well, what is the cause of the delusion and when did it rise in us? So, if I do not know my own divinity, which I am, then what is the cause of, how did I get into the delusion? And when did it arise? In this life, or previous life, or previous life? Answer. The cause of delusion here is the same as it is everywhere. It is ignorance. How can you know when that ignorance arose? How that ignorance arose, how can you know? As long as you are in ignorance, your efforts to know it are in vain. As long as one dreams a dream, one remains convinced that it is real. When sleep breaks, the dream is compared with the waking state and is known as unreal. Very simple fact. When we are in the dream, so we do not see the real waking state. When we awake, then we compare the awakened state to the dream state and come to know that dream is unreal and waking state is the real state. You may raise the objection that certain persons have sometimes the conviction that they are dreaming when they are actually in the dream state. Some people are there, so they feel, what is this? This seems unreal. They are in dream. Even there, they are thinking it seems to be unreal. That means a little awakening is there. How does it happen? If it must be completely delusion, means you must be completely unaware. How does he get this doubt? This may be unreal, like that. When they are actually in the dream, they think like that. But there also they get that conviction from the memory of the waking state. Some people's memory of the waking state is so strong, it percolates into the dream. When they get that percolated, the waking state in their mind, then they doubt, is it a dream that I am here? So that dream, questioning the dream comes inside the dream in such rare cases where they have very strong impressions of the waking state. Similarly, some people are seen, they have the memory of the reality of the non-dual Brahman when they are conscious of the world in the waking state. You see, the author gives us an example. People who have got a experience of Brahman, they have experienced the Brahman directly. So when they are in the waking state, they have come down from the Samadhi state to the waking state. This is like a dream for them. See, from here when we go into dream, this is the higher state, waking state for us. When we are in Samadhi, that is the higher state, and we are in delusion when we are in the waking state. That's what is impressive. So when we are in the waking, people, they remember that they are Brahman. They have experienced Brahman. That thought comes to them. Then even in dream, they are aware it is a dream. It is true. It is in the spiritual world also we see when one becomes strongly advanced in spiritual life, they may be in the world, but they never mistake the world to be the real one. They consider this world as the play of God, as a dream of God in which we are all involved. We are all personages dealing within that dream. Then another question. Then what is the way out? How to get out of the dream? The way to get out many times. So we get into such horrible situations in dream. We would very much like to get away. But how to get out? There is no way. You are in yourself in delusion. There is nobody else can get into your dream to wake you up. They can only shake your body if you are just crying or doing something during dream. Sometimes we shake the children or even the elders. What are you dreaming? What are you dreaming? This shaking experience may give something of the waking state in the dream. Then they may wake up. That is the idea. So, what is the way out? He is asking the question. Let us see what he answers. The way out is to remove that ignorance. The way out is to remove that ignorance that I am the Atman. I am not the Atman. So you must remember that you are the Atman. Even when you are in the dream, when you are in the dream, if you remember, hey, I am Gautamananda of Ramakrishna Mission. I am so and so of such and such an address. If you remember, you wake up. That is the end of the dream. So in this case, spiritual case, when you remember that you are Brahman, then this world becomes a dream. It appears in its real form. That is, it is only a delusion. It is only a transitory thing. So it is only for a few years or few seconds. Sri Ramakrishna used to compare the long life of Ravana to a few seconds of Shiva. Shiva, it seems, was sitting there in Himalaya. Then suddenly a sound was heard, dham, a drum. So then Nandi, who was in front of him, he said, "What, sir, what is this sound of the drum? Ravana is born." And then another, after a few seconds, another drum beat was there. Then Nandi asked, "What is this?" Ravana is dead. Ravana lived for thousands of years. So this thousands of years was only a few seconds. So we come to know that this world, what we call as 100 years, is only 100 seconds when we realize God. When the God realized person comes, he considers this whole world as a sort of a play, a magic show. Sri Ramakrishna gives this magic show example. Magician alone is true. All his magic is false. God alone is true. God's play, all this is false. So, that the way out is to remove that ignorance. I can tell you with certainty that ignorance and delusion can be removed. See, we can realize God, we can realize ourselves as part and parcel of God or ourselves as God. We can realize it. When once you realize it, then you see that the world appears in its true form, that is, it is the play of God. It is a dream in the cosmic mind. Instead of calling it as a play of God, it is also called as he is imagining, his imagination, the cosmic brain, cosmic mind. So in every type of language, many types of language, it is described. The ancient seers were able to remove them and have left us instructions about the method. How to realize this Atman. They have left the method. If we follow that and realize the Atman, that we come to know the reality of this phenomenal world in front of us. Then another question. Very well. But before we proceed to know those means, we want to put one or two questions. You assert that to be unreal, which we and so many others see and feel to be real, and you call that alone to be real, which a few sages have seen and experienced. So many crores and crores, perhaps 1,000 crores of people in this world think that this world is real, and maybe 1,000 enlightened people may say this world is unreal. Why should we take those 1,000 people's opinion as true, neglecting the opinion of 1000 crores of people? That is the question. May it not be that their immediate perception was wrong? May it not be that what the rishis say, that this is unreal, be wrong? And this majority of people we are telling that the world is real, let us enjoy it, let us not bother about God. This is real. Why should we not take this to be real? Because majority are there behind it. And absolute, very, very, very little minority. So that minority only says this is unreal. Why should we give preference to that? Answer. There is no such rule that what many believe is alone true. Correct. Very, very correct scientifically also. When the scientists found out that the earth goes around the sun does not go around the earth. But the preachers of religions, they started telling, no, no, it is all written in the scriptures. In this scripture, in that scripture, that the earth is steady because God, Jesus has come, or Krishna has come, Rama has come. Therefore, the earth is God's place. This cannot move. Only sun is going around. So that is the religious way of looking at the sun-earth relation. Whereas the scientists proved that it is the earth that goes around, not the sun. Sun is steady. So it happens like that. So very few people, very few scientists asserted that sun is steady, earth moves. And most of the people, crores and crores of people, in the time of the scientists, 400 years, 500 years back, Galileo, etc., Copernicus, all these people, in our place, Bhaskar Bhatta. So they all said that earth moves, not the sun. But religious people, fanatics, they said, no, no, in our scriptures it is written, earth does not move, earth is God's. So God is steady here. The sun goes round and round. So many people were proved wrong. Today we don't believe that the earth is steady and sun goes round, because truth prevails. Though it is asserted by only a few people, truth prevails. Truth is stronger than falsehood. So they attained, there is no such rule as what many believe is alone true. I say that the direct knowledge of the seers is true because they attained freedom from fear in all respects and enjoyed eternal peace, freed from all kinds of misery with the help of that knowledge. Whenever knowledge comes, it gives you freedom from fear. Only ignorance creates fear. So whenever you learn anything true, and that will always must give you fearlessness to an extent. So we were fearing, oh, this star will do this, that star will do that, this planet will do that. So when you come to know that planet and the stars, they are all just luminous things in the big space. So now we are not so much afraid of this planet or that planet. We say if we lead a good life and dedicate it to God, no planet can do anything. Sakala Graha Balanine. So the Purandaradasa sang, O Lord, you are the strength to us against all the planets. No planet can do anything for a really spiritual man. We get fearlessness because we have the truth on our side. So simply saying that certain things will happen. So we were believing, but that was untrue. When we get to truth, we become fearless. That is one of the conditions of truth. Truth must be giving you fearlessness. Truth must make you stronger. Truth must make you steady. Truth must make you happy. So truth is always stronger than million falsehoods. One truth will destroy million falsehoods in one stroke. So freed from all, so those people who enjoyed, they attained freedom from fear in all respects and enjoyed eternal peace, freed from all kinds of misery with the help of that knowledge. When people realized that they were divine in nature, they were Atman, indestructible, so they attained to fearlessness, etc., etc. Moreover, they became aware of a great purpose underlying all the efforts and endeavors of human life, ending in inevitable death. Besides, right knowledge always unfolds the human mind, forbearance, contentment, compassion, humility, and other noble qualities, and endows it with a wonderful magnanimity. We know from the scriptures that the seers possess those uncommon qualities and powers, and we still come across them in people who, following in their footsteps, have achieved perfection. So the author says, even today, people of spiritual perfection, the knowers of God, knowers of the Atman, Atma Jnanis. So they are compassionate, they are lovable, they are full of compassion, and at the same time free from fear of anything, heaven, hell, death. They are free from all fear. So it is true that man can attain to that one. So that is the only solution for getting out of this delusion that this world is true and we will be eternally in it. And so world alone, worldly life alone is the life. There is no afterlife. And similarly, there is no previous life also. That means there is no Atman. Only we are the body. Body, as long as we are alive, this world is true. Our body is also true. When the body goes away, what happens? We also do not know. Whatever other people know, but we can never know that this world is unreal. So it is real as long as we are. Then we pass away. So this sort of a wrong philosophy will develop if we do not get into the real knowledge. And the question only is, can anyone realize this real knowledge? That I am the Atman, I am the divine being. He says, yes, it is possible. Because thousands and thousands of people have realized. They have left instructions how we can also realize our God. Then the next question he raises. Well, how is it that all of us have the same delusion? This is a very pertinent question. What I identify as a beast is also known by you as a beast and not as man. So and so it is with everything else. It is a matter of no little surprise that at the same time so many people are in the same delusion about all matters. It is everywhere seen that if a few people have a wrong knowledge of a certain thing, others have the right one. But here, the truth does not hold good at all. Therefore, what you say does not seem to be probable. So, you see, all of us are seeing this world. What I say as a beast, you are all 100 people in front of me, or 1,000 people in front of me. You also consider the same beast as the same beast. But in the delusions case, we see so many delusive cases in the psychiatry departments of the hospital. A psychology patient, he sees delusion. But we don't see delusion. He says, oh, here is a devil. We don't see the devil. Oh, he says, here is a snake. We don't see. But here in this case, all of us are seeing this world, which you say is delusion. And all of us seeing the same delusion. How is it possible? So that was the question. So it is going to be answered further through many more answers and questions in the next discourse. We will take it up then. Niranjanam nityamanantarupam bhaktanukampadhrita vigraham vai Ishavasaram parameshamidhyam tam Ramakrishnam shirasa namama. O Ramakrishna, of taintless, changeless and infinite form, who has incarnated only to bless the devotees and who is the adorable Supreme God Himself, we salute you with our heads down.